Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good afternoon. I notice that my colleagues on the other side have a lot to say, even before I've started. But y'all should know that it doesn't matter what you have to say about racism and racist and whatever, we will continue to speak the truth. So, just so that you're put on notice, Mr. Speaker, I want to clarify a few matters before I get to the substance of what it is that I want to say. Mr. Speaker, I felt as if you did me a disservice this morning by only extracting 2 lines from the letter that I sent to you. Mr. Speaker, you will recall that it said, in the context of our external affairs and national security, and in respect of the information in the public space in connection with the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Home Affairs, please be advised that we intend to ask the following questions at the next sitting of the National Assembly. 1, was the permanent...
Honorable member, if you have a problem with my ruling, you're free to bring a motion against me and have it debated here. And I know, honorable members, please. Honorable members, please. And I quoted the relevant line because you don't advise the speaker, you seek leave, regardless of what matter it is. You may proceed substantively with your contribution.
Mr. Speaker, I will say this, that I understood exactly what you said this morning. I understood it very clearly, and I have made the point that I feel as if, as a member of this National Assembly, you did me a disservice.
Honorable member, when I apply the standing orders, when I apply the standing orders to the questions and to any matter in the Assembly, I apply them based on convention, based on the letter of the standing orders before us. And I cannot determine how a person will feel once a decision is made.
Absolutely,
I don't deal with the emotions, I deal with the rules.
No, you're absolutely right about the fact that you cannot determine how we will feel. Mr. Speaker, I think I have made my point on that matter.
And I think I've made mine.
So I will proceed now. Mr. Speaker, I want to make a few points of clarification because I noticed that my colleague, the Honorable Vincent Henry, was continually interrupted when he spoke about the Amerindian Act. But Mr. Speaker, well, I will tell you how it is relevant, Mr. PM. This morning, your side sent an amendment that says, in the event of any conflict between the provisions of this act and those of any other law, the provisions of this act shall prevail. You have opened the door for us to talk about any law of this side that we wish to speak on. That is what that means. And so for you to attempt to curtail my colleague when he speaks about the impact of this on the Amerindian Act, now we know who not reading and who don't understand. It's there. I will respond to Mr. Dharamlal in due course. It's a good thing, you know, people don't take him too seriously. Mr. Speaker, I want to go on record as saying that we support efficiency, we support ease of doing business, and we support, in principle, this notion of a single window. We are on record as saying that. So I want my colleagues on the other side to understand that when you attempt to do your press to say that we are against business and we are against efficiency, that the people of Guyana will weigh you in the balance and find you wanting, because we are on record as saying that we support it. That must be made pellucid. That must be, if you listen, Mr. PM, you will hear the point that I am making. You will certainly hear, don't worry. Mr. Speaker, let me say this. Let me say this, and I think I've been very clear. We support the bill, we support efficiency, we support the ease of doing business. I have repeated just for emphasis and for the benefit of the Honorable AG on the other side. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, the concerns that we have, however, cannot be ignored. We have to point out that this single window business, while it is relatively new to Guyana, is not new to the rest of the world. And therefore, we have the advantage of not only learning from their successes, but also learning from the pitfalls that we have to guard against. And Mr. Speaker, when you read and you research, you realize that there are a couple of pitfalls that we have to guard against. A lack of accountability. Mr. Speaker, we have to appreciate the fact that this single window system could lead to a diffusion of functions. And when you diffuse functions, you create the opportunity for a lack of accountability. We are not saying don't do it. What we are saying is let us fix it so that it is a pitfall that we could avoid. I am very happy that the minister has taken on our suggestion to have this matter sent to a select committee. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. Because there are a number of very serious issues that have to be addressed. Another one of the concerns, Mr. Speaker, is this issue of reduced oversight. Mr. Speaker, the effect of what we are seeking here to do is to consolidate a number of approving functions. And in doing so, Mr. Speaker, we have to understand that we are creating the opportunity for a lack of scrutiny. Again, we are not saying don't do it. We are saying acknowledge that this is a risk and let us together figure out how we could put robust measures in place to mitigate those risks. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that we have to be very mindful of is developing the expertise across the approving agencies. We have to be sure that before we roll this out, that all of the agencies involved are at a bare minimum on an equal level of expertise. I don't have to read and spell for us the dangers of that not being so. Again, we are not highlighting this as a hindrance to the bill. We are highlighting it with the view that we can, in the select committee, find a solution to it. Mr. Speaker, the other issue that we have to guard against is the potential for bias. And I smiled there because I heard my colleague before me in his, I don't know what that was, in his presentation, spoke about the removal of political interference. Mr. Speaker, I want to read for us from the bill itself. From the bill itself, it is section 22 of the proposed bill. 5, subsection 5. What does it say? It says, the decision of the Planning Appeal Tribunal shall be final unless the minister declares the matter to be one of national interest. So the minister, without any circumscription that guides this discretion, can declare a matter of national interest. So if he doesn't want to deliberate on a matter, oh, it's a matter of national interest. Mr. Speaker, that is dangerous, and that is not decentralizing it politically. Mr. Speaker, let me continue. It says, if a declaration under subsection 5 is made, the decision of the tribunal shall be reviewed by the cabinet. But we're depoliticizing it. But the appeal is to cabinet. But we're depoliticizing it. So basically, we are trying the devil's case in hell. Right? Okay? So when you have, for example, and I noticed the AG on the other side is saying, oh, it is only in relation to national interest. The fact remains, sir, that you cannot have a minister declaring that. The reality is that it is highly unlikely that cabinet will disagree, and you can therefore see very clearly how this provision allows somebody who may not be a friend, a family, or a favorite of this government being prejudiced in their application. And that is the point that I am making. So when you talk about removing political interference, Mr. AG, or I'm sorry, Mr. Darmlal, who has left the dome, this is the epitome of putting it in the middle there, because what it means now is that if Honorable Ramjitan wants to put up a building, they can declare that it is in the national interest that he doesn't, and then they will take it to cabinet and they will say that cabinet says no. Having removed the right of Mr. Ramjitan to appeal to a judge in chambers, which was occasioned when they revoked that section 16 of the Tongue and Country Planning Act. So that is what they have done. They have removed the right of a citizen to appeal to a judge. And they're sending it now to cabinet. Right? So we're going to try the devil's case in hell. Again, Mr. Speaker, you see, this is the problem that I have with the PPPC. Every opportunity they have to engage in mischief, they take it. Every opportunity. And so they go there and they say to the people, oh, this is about the ease of doing business, and so on and so on. But couched in this same legislation are all of these nefarious provisions. This is why you got to watch them closely. You got to watch them. The other day it was, oh, a red wave. When you do get down to the bottom, dead people sign, people overseas sign. But there's this big red wave. Right now, people are at Belladrum being paid $20,000 to put a name on the nomination form. You gotta watch them. The people at Wakenham were visited by a minister to say, take your name off the list. You gotta watch them. You gotta watch them, the Honorable Indar. You gotta watch them. So they come with all of these nice things. Oh, we want the ease doing business, and we gotta move up on the business index, but couched in it is the wickedness and totalitarianism that we on this side of the house will forever stand against. Mr. Speaker, the other recommendation and the other observation that we've made is that, look, and maybe Anil as the honorable member, Nandlal, could look at the drafting, because there is a paucity of offenses in this bill. There is an offense created for confidentiality breaches, but certainly you are dealing with a system that people can hack, that people can deliberately cause to malfunction, and certainly this must be countenanced in the bill and the appropriate penalties put in place. So we need a stronger, more robust enforcement in this bill, because as you have acknowledged, it deals with serious issues, it deals with sensitive information, and based on the rantings of Mr. Honorable Nigel Darmlal just now, we're not very confident in the ability to deal with confidential information.
Integrity Commission does some big leaks, sir.
Because the fact that he could tell people about who owns in bill and who owned properties where, when MPs are duty bound to declare that to the Integrity Commission, tells us that they have a difficulty with being confidential. And that posture, sir, undermines the system. Mr. Speaker, look, the other issue that we want to look at. And I think in this regard, my colleague, the Honorable Ganesh Paul, moved some amendments. And so I believe he is speaking, and I will therefore defer to him to move that. But we need, as a matter of urgency, to have clearly spelled out this committee, this appeals tribunal, because if you look at section 22, what it says is that there is hereby established a plan in appeals tribunal for the purpose of hearing appeals against decisions of the central authority made pursuant to this act and any other enactment in respect of planning and development applications. The constitution of the procedure of the Planning Appeals Tribunal, the constitution and the procedure of the Planning Appeals Tribunal shall be prescribed in regulations. In regulations. So you are giving a body appellate functions, and you do not bring the constitution and the procedure requirements for this tribunal in the principal legislation. You bring it in regulations. Completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. There has to be spelled out very clearly how this tribunal is going to be convened, how it is going to be constituted, particularly because you are proposing to vest it with wide and sweeping powers. Mr. Speaker, it should be in the primary legislation. And the lawyers over there like to tell people that they're not lawyers. They want to sneak it in because they know that the regulations are not subject to the level of scrutiny that the principal legislation have. So for all of you, the Honorable Nandlal will tell you that I am correct. A grave matter like this should be in the principal legislation and subscribed to and scrutinized on the floor of the House. Because this is somebody, they want to deal with it in cabinet. They want to try the devil's case in hell. It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Watch them.
You got to watch them. You have to watch them. The other point, that I want to make, Mr. Speaker, is that we have to contemplate the possibility that this bill really does, and as referenced by my colleagues on the other side when they spoke, really does whittle away at the powers of local authorities. And so we have to be very clear, and I welcome the Select Committee because this will give us the opportunity to hammer this out. Because the Constitution is very clear on local governance. The Constitution is very clear in Article 13 about inclusionary democracy, and it goes on to say particularly for people in their localities and making decisions that will affect their local lives. Mr. Speaker, it therefore means that if there's a possibility that this bill would offend the constitutional provisions on local governance, we have a duty as this House to correct it before we send it forward. We have a duty, Mr. Speaker, and we cannot shy away from that duty. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to end by making an observation, and this comes from my experience working in the civil aviation sector, that we have to be careful. We have to be very careful on the back end how we are integrating these permissions and who is pronouncing on these permissions, because there are safety and security considerations that attend, for example, the maritime sector, the aviation sector, and this is why we just can't have any and everybody that the government would think suitable on this tribunal. And this is why we have to not exclude. This is why we cannot exclude the review of the court, Mr. Speaker. So I wanted to flag those points. And again, I want to make it clear, lest the propagandists on the other side run away to say that we are against progress. That we are not against progress. We are not against efficiency. We support in principle the bill, but we are highlighting these pitfalls so that we can avoid them, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we have been doing that. We warned when they brought that motion about the Public Accounts Committee, what you will see. We warned about the Natural Resources Fund and the abuse that we would see. We warned, and we are warning now that this has to change, or else the people of Guyana are going to be done a great disservice. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.